I went to boarding school for the first 2 years of high school, and during that time the campus was plagued by a mysterious peeping Tom. The fear and anxiety surrounding this unknown figure were almost palpable, like a thick fog that clung to the walls of our dormitories and classrooms. For as long as I could remember, this elusive individual was spotted peeking at girls in their rooms through windows as they changed. Sometimes he would even reach through windows on the first floor to grope people while they slept. The campus security, a small team of mostly older men, seemed perpetually on edge, always just a step behind the intruder. They would chase shadows in the dead of night, flashlights slicing through the darkness, but the creep would slip away every time. The stories of their near catches became almost as legendary as the incidents themselves. "If only we had been a second faster," they'd say, frustration etched into their faces. One evening, just as the sun was setting, the atmosphere at school shifted from the usual unease to something darker, more insidious. Whispers spread through the dorms like wildfire. Another girl had been targeted. This time, however, it wasn't just a fleeting glimpse or a quick grab. He had lingered, his face pressed against the glass, staring intently at the terrified girl until she screamed and he vanished into the night. The incident left everyone on edge, and the girls in the younger dorms. Despite the increased patrols and the installation of extra locks and bars on the windows, the peeping Tom continued his sinister activities, as if mocking the school's feeble attempts to stop him. We all wondered who he was. Was he a student, a staff member, someone from the nearby town? The rumours were endless, each one more outlandish than the last, but the truth was far more shocking than any of us could have imagined. One crisp autumn morning, as we were filing into our classrooms, I noticed something unusual. My business teacher, a usually composed woman in her mid-30s, was standing outside her classroom, tears streaming down her face. She was surrounded by a few other teachers who were murmuring words of comfort, though their faces were tight with something that looked like fear or disgust. As the day wore on, the news spread. The peeping Tom had finally been caught. The relief that should have washed over us was instead tinged with horror when we learned his identity. It was her husband, the man who had been terrorizing the girls for so long, and the man we all had seen occasionally at school functions, shaking hands and smiling warmly. The revelation sent shockwaves through the school. How could this have been happening right under our noses? How could a man so seemingly ordinary, so involved in the school community, be capable of such depravity? But the more we thought about it, the more the pieces began to fit together. The way he always volunteered to help at school events, his frequent visits to campus. Even though he had no official business there, it all suddenly seemed so obvious. The day he was caught, the details of which were carefully kept from us students, marked a turning point in our lives. But it wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. As the days passed, more disturbing details came to light. The man had kept a meticulous journal, documenting his exploits in sickening detail. He had stalked his victims for months, learning their routines, finding out which girls were the most vulnerable. The journal also contained photographs, hundreds of them, taken through windows, under doors, and even in common areas. The girls in the pictures were often unaware they were being watched, their innocence captured by a predator lurking in the shadows. The most chilling discovery, however, was that he hadn't acted alone. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that there were others, accomplices who had helped him, either by providing information or by actively participating in his crimes. Some of these people were students, older boys who had been coerced or manipulated into assisting him. But there were also whispers of another adult, someone with a position of authority at the school, who had turned a blind eye to his actions for reasons we could only speculate on. The school administration was thrown into chaos. The headmaster, a stern man who had always prided himself on the institution's reputation, was suddenly nowhere to be found. Some said he had resigned in disgrace. Others believed he had been quietly removed to avoid scandal. The rumors that swirled in the aftermath were as dark and twisted as the events themselves, and then, just as we thought the worst was over, something even more horrifying happened. One night, as the campus was still reeling from the revelations, a fire broke out in the dormitory where many of the younger girls stayed. The blaze spread quickly, fueled by the old, dry wood of the building and the strong autumn winds. Panic erupted as students and staff scrambled to evacuate. I remember the sound of the fire alarms blaring, the acrid smell of smoke filling the air, and the desperate cries of girls trapped on the upper floors. By the time the fire department arrived, the dormitory was engulfed in flames. It took hours to bring the fire under control, and when it was finally extinguished, the building was a charred ruin. Several girls were injured in the chaos, and tragically, the loss was unbearable, and the school was plunged into mourning. In the aftermath of the fire, it was discovered that the blaze had been deliberately set. Investigators found traces of accelerant in several locations, pointing to arson. But who could have done such a thing? Was it a final act of revenge by the peeping Tom, or was it someone else entirely? The police launched a full-scale investigation, interviewing everyone: students, teachers, staff. The atmosphere at the school became one of suspicion and paranoia. Friends turned on each other, and trust was shattered. We all wanted answers, but the truth seemed more elusive than ever. Then, one night, a group of students decided to take matters into their own hands. They had grown tired of waiting for the authorities to uncover the truth, and were determined to find out who was responsible for the fire. Armed with flashlights and a sense of grim resolve, they snuck out of their dorms and made their way to the old, abandoned building at the edge of the campus, the place where the peeping Tom had been caught. The building had once been used as a storage facility, but it had long since fallen into disrepair. It was rumoured to be haunted, and few dared to go near it, especially at night. But the group of students was undeterred. They believed that the answers they sought were hidden within its crumbling walls. As they explored the building, they stumbled upon a hidden room, one that had been carefully concealed behind a false wall. Inside, they found a treasure trove of evidence, more photographs, more journals, and something even more disturbing: a list of names. The list included the names of all the girls who had been targeted, along with notes detailing their daily routines and vulnerabilities. But what shocked them most was that the list didn't end with the names of those who had already been victimized. There were other names, girls who had not yet been attacked, but who were clearly marked as future targets. Realizing the gravity of their discovery, the students quickly took the evidence to the authorities. The investigation was reopened, and this time it wasn't just the peeping Tom who was under scrutiny. The accomplices, both students and staff, were identified and arrested, and the full extent of the conspiracy was finally brought to light. In the end, the school was closed, unable to recover from the scandal and the tragedy. The survivors were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, haunted by memories of the horror they had endured. And though justice was eventually served, the scars left behind would never fully heal. Years later, when I look back on those dark days, I'm filled with a sense of disbelief. How could something so sinister have happened in a place that was supposed to be safe? The peeping Tom and his accomplices were monsters, yes. But what was even more terrifying was the way their actions revealed the darkness lurking just beneath the surface of our seemingly idyllic school. It's a lesson I've never forgotten. Evil can hide in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the real horror isn't what you see in the shadows. It's what's hiding in plain sight.
What the craziest story you know about high school? Write in comments. Best of them we will add to new videos. Subscribe, you will help us a lot. We work very hard for new videos. Love you.